So I normally don't do these types of challenge videos as I'm not actually that good at playing video games. Of this series in particular, I haven't played a real Pokemon game since like 2013. But then I saw this video by Zwigo on my recommended where he played through one of my favorite ROM hacks with only stolen Pokemon. And I'm just like, wasn't that the point of the game? Like bro, come on, I did a steal-only run by accident on my first playthrough, that's easy. To be serious though, I do want to thank Zwigo for inspiring me to make this video. I did like his video and it made me want to do my own run but with the opposite twist. No stealing at all. Sort of like the regular games, except it gets kinda harder when you realize that the game was balanced around being able to snatch from the local Joeys and gambling old men. I also figured I may as well add being moral on top of it, so like sticking with the same team, no using herbs, stuff like that, even though it's not as important. I probably should have mentioned this earlier, but in case you don't know, Rocket Edition is essentially Fire Red, but you play as a Rocket Grunt and have the ability to take one Pokemon from each trainer you defeat, granted that you're high enough rank. For example, Grunts can steal from children, Admins can take from adults, and etc. Though that isn't really relevant information for this run. I'll be playing through the whole game, and I do plan on covering the story, so there will be spoilers if you care. I also want to mention that I won't be going for 100% completion, because firstly, some side quests require stealing or other bad stuff that kinda goes against the theme of the run, and secondly, my main goal is to just beat the game. Here are the rules I'll be using. They aren't super hardcore or anything. No items during battle, set mode, and of course, no stealing. No except for the no stealing rule. I will have to steal one Pokemon at the start no matter what, which I found out the hard way, but I'll get more to that soon. Let's start. So I start off the game and get some exposition about this war that happened that caused lands to rise to power, leading to organizations like Team Rocket to rise in rebellion. By the way, this is a bit shameless, but if you haven't watched it already, I made a video on this ROM a while back that went more in depth into the lore and what I liked about it. Anyways, this guy who you might know from Gen 4 introduces us to the world of Team Rocket. I give him my totally real life name and move on. So now it tells me what I need to do for my first mission. I'll be given the HM for Fly and have to find my way over to Mount Moon. It is actually kinda troublesome as we'll come to see. So I go up to get my Rattata and I actually get a choice. I say no because, well, what if it's stolen? Well, we don't get a choice, so I'll just pretend that it wasn't stolen. Upstairs, I get some advice about something I'll never be able to do and the HM for Fly. Then before leaving, I run to our best friend Ronnie, who's super eager to head out. Outside, our dollar store tutorial man gives us some helpful tips on stealing and leads me to a little girl. By the way, since you start out as a grunt, you can only steal from children and old people at this point. Now of course, the point of this run is to not steal, so I go around looking for a way out. And I really go around. Like, I spend 20 or 30 minutes exploring the city just trying to think of something. Some things to note that I found was that the loser in the restaurant won't give me a coin case, unlike in the original, so I can't pull any casino shenanigans early game. And I also found an ether behind the department store and an Eevee on top of this building. Now this is not stealing. I even double checked with the guy in the front. He's kinda passive aggressive about it, but he's too busy going through an existential crisis to care about me taking his Eevee, so he just gives it to me. In fact, considering how depressed this guy is, I would argue that I rescued this Eevee rather than stole it. This does not taint my good morals run. I also met with one of the developers, and he told me that not stealing can be just as fun, which I kinda really doubt. I checked Route 7 and I ran into an old man. In normal playthroughs, I usually steal from this guy because the Pokemon he uses are super helpful for Mount Moon, but I can't do that here obviously. Something important to note here is that I started off with no money and this guy just gave me 20 cents. Since this game is balanced around stealing, all trainers give you minuscule amounts of cash, and Pokeballs are really not worth it in normal playthroughs. Now here's where I come up with a plan to avoid stealing from this little girl. I noticed that while Pokeballs aren't for sale, Great Balls are. However, $6 is way more than I could afford for probably a while. But remember that item I picked up earlier? It can be sold for exactly $6, so I can afford one Great Ball. Yeah, this is what living in poverty feels like. Now what about the Pokemon? I still need a flying type to head over to Mount Moon. Conveniently, Pidgey can be found on Route 7, the only other area I have access to. So I head over there and, despite the odds, catch a level 3 Pidgey first try. From there I teach it Fly and we're good now, right? Not quite. Even though I can fly, the game won't let me fly to any location other than Celadon. It won't register Mount Moon as a place I can fly to until I steal from this little girl. It's programmed so that I have no choice but to steal in this part. So I begrudgingly head back over to Ronnie, who's been waiting there for like an hour now, just staring at a little girl, and beat her up. I steal a Sparrow and I don't name it because it's not mine. Now technically I would fail the run because I stole from her, but seeing as how I had a valid workaround but was given no choice by the game, I'm choosing not to count this. If the creator of the ROM is watching this, which I really doubt, please make skipping the tutorial possible. I just wasted like an hour of my life coming up with a solution. So I box the Sparrow without touching it and open up Fly. Now I can go to Mount Moon. A cutscene plays right when I get there and the mission is revealed to be about getting some rare fossils. I head in and face my second trainer battle. Here I realized I was kinda underleveled, so I decided to go back to Route 7 and grind a bit. Now funny thing, I actually ran into a shiny Pidgey, so that was nice. Unfortunately, I'm too broke to afford Pokeballs, so rip. Back in Mount Moon, I face a bug catcher who I can but don't steal from, and realize that I may have overleveled a bit. Now like I said, this is my first time doing a challenge like this, so I'm not familiar with how much to grind and not to grind. I try to be more conscious of overleveling later on the run, so don't worry. Now some of my coworkers are talking about something interesting they found in this hole, and it turns out to be a moonstone. Back upstairs, we hear about a spiky-haired kid who's super strong. Wonder who that could be. Something cool about the trainers here is that there's a little girl with a Jigglypuff and a Clefairy, and a Joey with the Nidos. If I could steal, I could really put the moonstones they gave me to use here, but oh well. Next, I find a TM for Thief, and I debated a bit on whether or not I should be allowed to use it. After all, the rules say no stealing, and that might apply to items as well. I decided to play it safe, even though it would probably be really useful. Now, the main hurdle of this part is this hiker right here. If I remember correctly, he has a Geodude and an Onix, which I really can't handle. Outside of Bite on Rattata, all my Pokemon only know normal or flying type moves. This is where stealing from an old man really would have helped, but I managed to sneak past him because I just don't think it's worth it. So now I finally make it down to the Fossil Nerd and Ronnie. After bickering a bit, Ronnie leaves to inform the admin and tells me to keep guard. Now of course, there's this impossible battle with a certain someone. Not much to say about it, I got swept. So we failed the mission and head back to base. There we get to talk to Giovanni and get some cool lore. So apparently, the starter Pokemon are considered weapons of war, and Blaine is making Porygon for the game corner to sell. Blaine can't do it anymore though, so that leads us to our next mission. Going to Cerulean to bargain with Bill to get him to create more Porygon. Firstly, we have to head to the rocket base in Cerulean City to pick up a parcel to trade to Bill. Outside, we hear that Ronnie and everyone else is also going to Cerulean City to steal some TMs or something. Cool man, I'm happy for you. I can't fly to Cerulean and the underground path is closed, so I have to go through Saffron. I get blocked by the guard, but he's willing to let me pass for a $2 bribe. Unfortunately for me, I only have $2.40, so I have to give him like 85% of my savings to move on. Now in case you haven't figured it out yet, the Cerulean rocket base is actually underneath the daycare. It's a pretty messed up place with forced manual labor and breeding. But I mean, what'd you expect leaving a Pokemon with a shady old guy like this? Like, did no one think to ask where your Pokemon went when you left the daycare? They just kinda disappeared. Anyways, we meet up with the admin Archer and get the parcel for Bill. Before heading out, I take a stop at the bike shop. The owner decides it's a good idea to taunt this criminal I just walked in, but I can't steal, so I guess we don't get a bike for this run. Now this Pokemart is the first one to have regular Pokeballs available, which are more affordable. I picked up a Star Piece back in Mount Moon, so I'm able to sell it for finally a decent amount of money and get some balls. I blast through Nugget Bridge no problem, but unfortunately I don't get a prize. It's a rocket-funded program to hire new recruits, so it's kinda weird that I can steal from the trainers. I don't though, of course. I run into some nearby grass and catch an Oddish. The Pokeballs actually came in clutch here because the next route is filled with Geodudes, Onixes, and rock types like that. Though Absorb is a really bad move, Oddish still does a ton of work and I get by without much trouble. So I finally meet with Bill and he's kinda bratty. At first he isn't really impressed with the package, which by the way holds the SSN ticket which Red later gets, but then he agrees to create Porygon on the condition of getting rare Pokemon and some insider information on Silph Co. Something called the Mewtwo project gets name dropped, but I'm sure it's not that important or anything. I also unlock his social link, which is pretty cool. Now I actually make a mistake here by not going to the Pokemon Center before talking with Bill, because now my team is weakened and I have to face Blue. It actually goes kinda well for me. I like how Rattata not missing any moves instead of getting sand attacked, and I'm able to spam my own sand attacks with Pidgey, which gets me to win. He almost starts crying before walking off, and I meet up with Ronnie shortly after. But then we spot a cop and cheese it. So once we're back to base, the news starts playing and everyone freaks out. One of the victims recognized Ronnie and called us out on TV. Apparently, multicolored hair and all black uniforms in a region that's always daytime doesn't do much for camouflage. Somehow this case gets Lance's attention, and he starts talking about a new police system that'll double down on criminals and encourage reform. So after everybody gets angry at Ronnie for having green hair, Archer praises me and gives me details for our next mission. Lieutenant Surge is actually a Rocket sympathizer, and we have to trade him some lab stuff for rare Johto Pokemon. So I pick up the goods and head out. Now the underground path opens up for me to explore, but there might be some shady stuff going on down there. I'll never know however, because I'm a good upstanding citizen who would never go somewhere so scandalous. So there are now police officers in each town who will keep track of your bounty. The more you steal, the higher it is, and you can lower it with either bribes or by returning Pokemon. I tried to return the Spearow that I stole, but since I have a clean bounty, they don't let me. Gotta feel real bad for a Spearow. I didn't even need it. So a tree blocks the way, but the next admin, Proton, cuts it down. Inside the gym, we see Lieutenant Surge encouraging some kids who are sucking him off to do drugs, and we deliver our goods. He tells us that he left the right Pokemon on the SSN, so that's where we need to go. So I'm gonna skip through mostly everything I did on this ship, but I gotta give a shout out to this girl who let me heal up in her bed. She's got a weird fetish about watching people sleep, but I can dig it. Out on the hull, we get this cool scene between Lance and Steven. They go over the economy and politics of Kanto, and it's revealed that Professor Oak was a former champion during the Kanto-Johto War. But after surrendering, a lot of people in Kanto felt betrayed by him. Lance, as a general for Johto, took over as champion. He also mentions the genetic engineering project that Kanto tried to whip up but failed in doing so. Oak's also on house arrest or something and is banned from using Pokemon, which is pretty interesting. So the rare Pokemon are in the captain's room, and he catches me and decides to battle. He opens up with Tentacool and I open up with Oddish. We get locked a bit with both of us not really being able to chip at each other, but he reveals that he knows Acid and gets a knockout. I revenge go with Pidgey and also manage to take down his Krabby. Unfortunately, Sucker Punch is a move in this game and crits Pidgey with Diglett. I make the mistake of not going for Quick Attack and he OHKOs my Rattata. I manage to take out Diglett with my Eevee, but I'm basically done for and wipe out the Cypher. Now here I realize I'm kinda underleveled and understaffed, so I decide to explore the areas around Vermilion to grind up a bit. I go for Diglett's cave and catch a Diglett, which I figured would help against Tentacool, and I also get the Flashlight, which replaces replaces Flash. I beat the trainers in Route 11, and along with a tiny bit of grinding, I get my team up to a respectable level 20. My Rattata and Pidgey also evolve, which is very nice. I can't go further in this route because of Snorlax. During the rematch, I lead with Diglett. I take it as Tentacool pretty quickly, but he brings out Krabby. I decide not to switch out because I figure I could get more mileage out of Diglett, but I actually managed to win thanks to a para from Secret Power and accuracy drops from Mud Slap. Due to speed drops from his Mud Shot though, his Diglett outspeeds mine in revenge kills. Now I bring out Oddish, but he copies my strat of Mud Slap and beats me with a really strong magnitude. At this point though, Pidgeotto can sweep his team and I get the win. Now the captain threatens to call Steven, but Proton poisons him and gives him diarrhea. I always did wonder how a sea captain got seasick. Outside, we finish up the mission and Proton remarks how stupid it is that there's a random truck out in the middle of the ocean. Maybe there's an Easter egg in there, who knows? Anyways, we get told to head back to Celadon base. Right outside of the base, I get a call from Bill informing us about a super strong but mute kid who passed through. Wonder who that could be. So now there's this new service at the rocket base where you can get rewards based on how high your bounty is. Unfortunately, this does not help me. I report back to Giovanni, who starts becoming more cautious of Red. Mr. Fuji has gotten fed up with Team Rocket and has holed himself up on top of Pokemon Tower, cutting off her supply of Cubone skulls. All the other admins are busy, so it leaves us. Giovanni hands us a Silph Scope and sends us on our way. On the way, Oddish evolves into Gloom. In Lavender Town, everyone either really hates me or is really scared of me. Wonder why. In the tower, Blue spots me and we start the battle, except we don't, because he's kinda going for a rough patch. So as it turns out, his Raticate got really injured by Red on the SSN, and it died because Blue couldn't make it to the Pokemon Center in time. Beyond that though, Blue's always been resentful of Red because for some reason, his grandpa's always treated Red better. So yeah, Professor Oak is kind of a really bad person. Like damn, even after Blue's Raticate died, his grandpa basically told him to just get over it. I mean, even looking at canon, when Blue loses, what does his grandpa say? No congratulations on the accomplishment of becoming champion, or even any consolation over losing. Just you sucked, haha, and a ton of love for Red. Back to Rocket Edition, Blue tells us his revigorated ambition on becoming champion, and we unlock another social link. Now once again, I mentioned this in my last Rocket Edition video, but it's super cool how they incorporated subtle canon details and fanfares into a legitimately well-written story. Like, I think this is the most likable I've ever found Blue. I'm really rooting for him. Now after making it through a ton of crazy people who spam Curse and Confuse-Ray, we meet back up with Blue who's a bit weirded out and starting to doubt his grandpa's advice. Then we have to go through more Curse and Confuse-Ray spam. Finally, on the second to last floor, we meet back up with Blue and we confront a ghost. Of course, it transforms into a Marowak and I have to battle it. It's really high level, so I decided to play it safe with Sand Attack and Mud Slap. In retrospect though, it spammed Boomerang and False Swipe a lot, so I think if I just switched into Pidgeotto, it would have been a really easy win regardless. Upstairs, we confront Mr. Fuji in battle. He leads with a Marowak, who I'm pretty sure has the same moveset as the one that we just fought, so I actually do switch a Pidgeotto this time for an easy KO. Or so I think. He switches a Pikachu to tank and attack, but I pivot to Diglett and absorb a Thunderbolt. Thanks to low rolls of magnitude, Diglett feigns to a Pikachu, which it really has no business doing. A revenge kill of Eevee though, but he manages to get a Para with Static, which just, come on man. How come his Pikachus are so much better than mine? So now I switch to Pidgeotto and manage to take out his Marowak. Unfortunately, his Lickitung gets a revenge kill on me, and I decide to switch to Gloom. I take it out with Sleep and Acid, next to his Ditto. Now here I learned that grass types can get hit with Sleep Powder in this game, which is weird. The Eevee also gets taken at some point due to a 4-turn Para, but I managed to get the win regardless. After I choose not to steal from him, Fuji gets really upset at getting wrecked by some scumbag rocket grunt. If only this circus of a man knew. So Fuji starts mocking Giovanni's effort of revolution while sucking off Lance. He also mentions the Mewtwo project again, but just like with Bill, I'm sure it's not super important or anything. He also talks how he's been scarred for life by something called the Catastrophe, which is something to keep in mind. So now Archer finally shows up, conveniently right after I did all the work, and calls out Fuji for being a shill for Lance. He also calls out Lance as well for not exactly being a moral paragon and lying about it. Like, hot damn, this old man is getting absolutely ripped apart in every way. Archer tells us that he's taking over the spot and we're to head back to base. Sweet, it's your turn to get ass blasted by Red, I gotta get out of here. Downstairs, Blue tells us that he's actually starting to admire Team Rocket, and that once he becomes champion, he'll treat all of us fairly. He decides to stay with Raticate for a bit before thanking us. Like I said, Blue is super likable here. Outside, a certain someone shows up and asks if we know whether Mr. Fuji is in the tower or not. Believes after he realizes that we're Team Rocket. Yeah, maybe a less conspicuous uniform would have been better. Right outside of base, we see Red walking past us again. So in the timeline of the actual games, Red probably just got the Silph Scope and is heading for Lavender Town. Inside, we find every single Rocket member having lost, even Ronnie. So of course the boss is super angry and pissed off, but settles down when we start talking about the information on Red that we got from Blue. Afterwards, Giovanni starts opening up and decides to give us some much needed backstory. So 11 years ago, the last year of the Kanto-Johto War, things were getting desperate and the Kanto scientists resort to looking to Mew for firepower. Problem is, Mew doesn't actually like battling, so it's trash out in the battlefield. This leads to Giovanni funding something called the Mewtwo Project. Huh, where have I heard that name before? So the goal of the Mewtwo Project was to use Mew's DNA to synthesize a violent version of Mew that can actually be useful in war. It was led by the scientists scientists Bill, Fuji, Oak, Blaine, and someone named Shigeki. Unfortunately, they end up creating a ton of failed clones, or Dittos, instead of Mewtwo. The super cool incorporation of a fan theory, by the way, which is something we'll see a lot in this hack. One failed clone resulted in something extremely unstable, dubbed the Catastrophe, and escaped the lab. So eventually, after putting in their own DNA, scientists managed to successfully create Mewtwo. Now just like in the movie, Mewtwo GTFOs to boo for Egypt and doesn't actually help anyone. After that last ditch effort blew up in their face, Kanto loses the war and pretty much every one of the scientists go over to Lance's side, but Oak and Fuji especially. This is with the exception of Shigechi, who disappeared. Now to be clear, Oak is the one who surrendered first, so that's why the Kanto patriots are so pissed off at him. Back to the present, Giovanni sends Ariana to guard the Viridian gym in reaction to Red. Ariana agrees but mentions how much it would upset their son. Wonder who that could be. Now we get our next mission, going to Pallet Town to question Oak, also to learn more about Red since we know that's where he's from. Before we leave, we get promoted to Rocket Admin and get a Rocket Pager, which is something Giovanni uses to contact his admins. This also means that we can steal from women and teenagers now, which is just so helpful. Upstairs, Ronnie tells us that he hasn't got a new mission yet and decides to tag along with us to Pallet Town. While making my way there, Diglett evolves into a Dugtrio in the Viridian Forest, so now its name will be a bit less nonsensical. In Vermilion City, an angry kid named Silver passes by us and we get a warm welcome from Mariana. In the gym, there's another rocket base with a lot of the same services as the main one. This one though features a black market where you can pawn off your own Pokemon for money. Not very useful for this playthrough. I get to Pallet Town and I go to the lab, where Oak seems to be away. His aides tell us to kindly F off. While leaving, Agatha suddenly flies in and inquires about why a rocket girl is hanging around a place like Pallet Town. We get invited inside Blue's house, where she reveals that she's actually Daisy and Blue's grandmother, and used to be Oak's lover. Ever since Oak surrendered, Agatha's been really resentful of him. After ranting about him for a while, Agatha reveals that she's actually somewhat sympathetic to Team Rocket as well, and then leaves. We hit it off with Blue's sister, but then Ronnie jumps in and ruins it. He starts talking about the Oak mission, which pisses Daisy off and leads to the next boss battle. Thanks, Ronnie. She leads with Chansey and I lead with Eradicate. I switch into Gloom for Poison, and then Dugtrio for accuracy drops and Sand Tomb Chip. Now I did brain fart a bit because I forgot about just how low Chansey's defense actually is, which, geez, it's so low. And then I realized I could just knock it out real quick with a physical move. Next is Ponyta, where we double KO because of recoil damage. Then the Arena comes out and I take it down with Eradicate. Your final member is Raichu, who for some reason decides to spam Tail Whip, and I defeat it without any issues. After that, Ronnie decides to attack Daisy's life points directly, knocking her out. Back in the main base, we catch Giovanni giving Ronnie an earful about yapping off about our mission, and for the shenanigans he pulled off back in Cerulean. Gee, thanks best friend, you're so likable. So unable to locate Oak, Giovanni postpones the endeavor and sends us off our next mission, going to Cinnabar Island to confront Blaine, who's been giving Team Rocket the cold shoulder. Upstairs, I get the illegal copy of Surf and head out. So I'm not going to go over it all, but before I head to Cinnabar, I go around and explore some of the routes and areas that I haven't gone to yet. You might have noticed that I was a tad bit under-leveled for the Daisy fight, so that's why. Although I can't go to Cycling Road because I refuse to steal the bike, which actually locks me out of certain aspects of the game. I also made a mistake of thinking that Eradicate can learn Surf, which I mean, come on, it can learn Ice Beam, so why can't it learn Surf? So since I don't want to abandon anybody, I decided to just evolve Eevee into Vaporeon to get something that can learn Surf. While I was at it, I also decided to get a Leaf Stone and evolve my Gloom. Pidgeotto also evolves into Pidgeot, and my team is now level 36 across the board. Back to the story, I make my way over to Cinnabar and hear that Blaine's probably gone to Pokemon Mansion. The mansion is pretty much the same as the original, and we can even see the classic lore on Mew. That doesn't until I make it to the basement floor, where a letter can be found addressed to Blaine. It essentially says that they discovered that Blaine is in cahoots with Team Rocket, and threatens to expose him. As it turns out, Professor Oak is the one who wrote it. I run to Blaine, who starts a battle. This one was very straightforward thanks to Vaporeon and Rain Dance, and it was a clean sweep for me. He says he really wants to help Team Rocket, but he also doesn't want to lose his job. He ends up relenting though because, well, I did just beat the shiz out of him. Something interesting we learned though is that Oak actually gave up on the Mewtwo project before anyone else, right after the Catastrophe, and started a mysterious second project of his own. I'm sure it's not that important though. In the end, Blaine comes to our side and agrees to make Porygon again. He leaves the key to his gym on the table so that weak trainers won't waste his time. Outside, the Rocket Pager rings and we get the call back to Celadon. So right before getting ass blasted by Red, Archer learned from Fuji that Silph Co is developing the ultimate Pokeball that can capture any Pokemon. Obviously, there are a lot of implications, like catching Mewtwo, and Team Rocket really can't afford to let the government or someone else get control of something like that, so the stakes are really high. At Silph Co, we get our mission, to find the most important scientists and to lock them up behind steel doors using a keycard. Now, if you recall, in the original game, Red goes through Silph Co unlocking steel gates to release scientists, so there's a cool little connection. So after beating up a whole lot of cops, getting lost a lot, putting some nerds into quarantine, and taking a lot of naps, I meet back up with Ronnie, who just finished up setting up a teleporter. He's feeling kinda down about not getting a super important job, so he decides to take our keycard back down to the admins for us. Gee, I hope some 11-year-old won't snatch that from Ronnie and single-handedly ruin our operation. That would suck. Instead of Blue, like in the original games, we run to Grandpa Oak. He shames us and then leaves. Real cool. Upstairs, we find Bill discussing business about the Master Ball with the Silph Co CEO. Surprise, surprise, Bill was never really invested into Team Rocket, and when we stay loyal as a Giovanni, Bill starts a battle. Now I'll say that Bill gives me a lot of trouble, and I pull a lot of small brain plays due to not paying attention. He leads with a cursing Porygon, and I lead with Pidgeot, which is a pretty bad matchup. I switch with Vaporeon and almost take it out. It uses Discharge though, which is an odd move for a curse set, and goes down soon enough. Next is Lapras, and oh boy, this thing gives me a lot of trouble. Vaporeon can't touch it, so I switch to Vileplume, and it goes to Perish Song. It actually freezes me with Ice Beam, but I defrost immediately. I switch to Vaporeon to guarantee survival, and on the last turn of Perish Song, the AI will always switch, so I go for Sand Attack because I don't know what his other Pokemon are yet. He switches to Pinsir, and I take it down with Surf while he tries a sub Sword Stance. He goes back into Lapras, and I sack my half-dead Raticate because I wasn't sure whether it knew Thunderbolt or not. I almost KO with Giga Drain. Knowing it would switch, I use Sleep Powder, and it lands on his Dragonair. I take it down with Sludge Bomb before it can wake up. It brings out Lapras again and heals it. From here, it's a pretty downhill battle. Lapras gets freezes on both my Vileplume and my Pidgeot, giving it 2 KOs that really didn't deserve. I finally take it out, and it ends with Kangaskhan versus my Dugtrio and Vaporeon. I make the mistake of using Mud Slap instead of digging twice, and it ultimately causes me to lose. So yeah, Bill cheesed that one with freezes, and I'm still kinda salty about it. Real quick before getting into my second attempt, I noticed that a lot of Bill's team is the same as the rewards you can get from the game corner, which is a cool detail. For the rematch, I guess I forgot about his Porygon lead and didn't switch Pidgeot, but it doesn't matter because it still goes down pretty easily. Now Lapras comes out again, and I go for Sand Attack anticipating a Perish Song, but uses Aqua Tail instead. I start spamming Sand Attack for good measure, but it eventually uses Perish Song, so I switch into Vileplume while he switches into Dragonair, who I eventually take out with Sludge Bomb. Now Lapras is back again, and I play it safe with a Porygon switch. It switches an Ice Beam into that Perish Song, which is all I really wanted before switching out to Vileplume. I get Sleep Hacks from Effect Sporo, which basically lets me bring it down to red and take out his Pinsir for low cost. Lapras comes out once more, and it survives way longer than it should due to potion spamming. I finally take it out, though my Vileplume goes down to Perish Song, and now it's Kangaskhan versus the world. I just spam attacks until it dies, and that's the battle. Bill runs off, and I confront the CEO, who still doesn't realize that Team Rocket is taking over. Giovanni once again praises us and promotes us to executive level. At first I thought that the design looked kinda weird, but then I realized that it's probably based off of Ariana's design. Still though, Giovanni dressed me up as his wife, so you know he's liking me. At this point we can steal from pretty much everyone except for gym leaders and Elite Four members, so again that's real helpful for this run. Red comes in and now Team Rocket is about to get their anal cavity ripped apart once more, but we don't have to be there for that. We also get a call from Bill to meet him at the Cinnabar lab. Inside the lab, we see Bill, Fuji, and Blaine all gathered there. Fuji doesn't want to work with me, but Bill shuts him right up. So Bill got the blueprints for a Master Ball and can build his own, but it turns out there's an anti-capture function Mewtwo that means even a Master Ball won't work. As it turns out though, Bill isn't talking about Mewtwo, but a certain other super powerful Pokemon that they created. In order to make the Master Ball though, Bill needs your card number, the expiration month and year, and the 3 digits on the back. Bill needs you to go to Viridian Forest to find an apricot and a pirated Silph Co chip located in the Team Rocket base. So that's why Bill was asking me for help even though I just whooped his ass. In Viridian Forest, I run to Silver who talks more smack about Team Rocket. I get the apricot and get called back to HQ. So guess who decimated our Silph Co operation, and Giovanni is fuming. Ronnie mistakes his rage for a prep talk and gets literally smacked out of Team Rocket. He prepares a final stand at the Viridian Gym and empties the base. Good luck with that. I defeat a leftover scientist and get the tech chip. After going back to Bill, he creates a new Master Ball. Now the plan is to use the Master Ball to catch the Catastrophe, but first we have to locate it. To do that, we need to find Shigeki, the 5th scientist who mysteriously disappeared. And to do that, they need me to head over to Cerulean Cave and beat Mewtwo's ass until he tells me where Shigeki is. Since Mewtwo has a psychic link with all the scientists who shared blood with him. So after they give me the Master Ball, I brute force my way through the guard and make it to Mewtwo. Now Mewtwo is like, actually pretty scary. He legit just goes like, yeah, it doesn't matter how strong your Pokemon are, I can literally just cut off your arm and kill you before you can even do anything. Thankfully though, since the scientist gave him a fetish for fighting, Mewtwo decides that he would rather have an honest and hard battle with us. So I immediately open up with spamming Sand Attack until his accuracy is at -6. I didn't realize this until partway through the fight, but his only attacking move is Psychic, so the developer basically turned on easy mode for this fight. That said, level 70 is still super high, and I still had to slowly take him down with Poison and Crunch. I win without taking damage. Mewtwo tells us that Shigeki has all along actually been hiding in plain sight. He's the old man Vermilion City who gives you the catching tutorial in the original game. Confronting him, he brings us inside. Before getting into it, Shigeki asks us to promise not to tell anyone where he and his family is. And of course, I agree like a gentleman. So 11 years ago, Shigeki lied to the others and said he didn't know what happened to Catastrophe. But in reality, he knew all along that it was actually frozen underneath Cinnabar's shoreline. He deactivates the restraints and sends us on our way. In Cinnabar, things get real weird. In case you don't realize, this is a reference to the Glitch City exploit in the original Red and Blue. Now funny thing, the hack actually glitches out for real for me, and I have to go back to my last save right before Mewtwo. After whooping Mewtwo a second time, I go to Cinnabar's shoreline and confront the Catastrophe. It turns out to be Missing No. So I'm gonna pause real quick to point out how this is all reference to the Missing No glitch in the original Red and Blue, where after talking to the old man Vermilion City, you can find this thing by swimming on Cinnabar's shoreline. This is really clever, and I just want to point it out because I really do love this hack and want more people to appreciate it. Anyways, I took a Master Ball to end catch it. It'll be super helpful in some of the harder fights later on. So now Fuji wants to destroy it, but Bill rightfully tells him to F off and we get to keep this absolutely a unit of a Pokemon. Now Blue comes out, shows off his 7th badge, and is super excited about seeing us again. I'm telling you, he's so likable in this hack, at least for me. Now strangely, Blue mentions that he's actually seen Missing No somewhere before. It turns out to be in the secret library that Blaine alluded to a while back. Blue mentions that Oak used a secret button hidden in a bookshelf to open it up, and now we head to Pallet Town. After using my Gordon Freeman skills of crowbarring and beating up scientists, I find a switch and make my way to the secret lab. Now it's real creepy down here, with menacing statues and conveniently placed and ominous diary entries. The first one has Oak dissing the Mew project and starting his own project. The next entry has Oak remembering that he's got a huge brain and doesn't need the raw power of Mewtwo. The entry after that has Oak talking about how Pokemon themselves are weak, and that the trainer is a strong one. Now one of the creepy statues caught me tripping and jumped me. Its team is mostly steel types though, so Dig makes short work of it. So now, we get into the genetically synthesized meat of Oak's plan, to scientifically engineer a boy to be the perfect trainer, and able to always coldly calculate the best strategies, as if he were playing a video game. In the next entry, Oak says he can't create a trainer like that in a short time, and he has to place the embryo inside of a local widow in order for it to succeed without suspicion. The next entry goes into Oak's plan. Since anyone who wins the Pokemon League becomes champion, all he needs to do is wait for his super strong and brainwashed trainer to grow up and defeat everyone. The final entry has Oak deciding to surrender and bide his time for his genetically engineered trainer to win the region back for him. Now in case you haven't caught on, the trainer he created was red, and that's why he's so strong. The twist is like so well written, and also ruined my childhood, but still. The rocket pager goes off, and I have to report back to the boss one last time. So on my way there, Red shows me aside again, and we all know what that means. Yep, Team Rocket had their anus pulverized for like the 5th time now by some 11-year-old. Giovanni admits defeat and shame and undergoes some really cool character development. He leaves a final present for me and then leaves, even though his wife and child are super pissed and sad. Inside the case, there's $100 and a letter from Giovanni telling us how proud he is of us, and how he wants us to storm the Pokemon League as a trainer and defeat both Lance, Red, and Oak. We get our final promotion to Rocket Boss, and now can steal from everyone, no matter who. Once again, that's so helpful for this run. Inside the gym, no one accepts us as the boss, and Proton mentions some plans he has for Team Rocket in the future. Good luck with that, man. It'd be a shame if another protagonist came in and ruined it all again. Heading to the Indigo Plateau, I bump into Lance, who's just been defeated by Blue. He lets out his anger on me and we start a battle. He leads off with Gyarados and I lead with Raticate, which is a bad matchup because of Intimidate, so I switch to Missing No. Its signature move, Super Glitch, only has a base power of 75, but it has a high chance to freeze. It's literally and mechanically hacks. It's very spammable. I eventually whittle down and defeat it. Next up is Aerodactyl. I switch to Vaporeon and take it out with Surf. Now is his Dragonair, who is way more tanky than I thought it would be, and KOs both my Vaporeon and my Dugtrio. Now from here, Raticate puts in a ton of work. It finishes off Dragonair, takes down Kingdra thanks to a crit, and chunks Dragonite before going down. Vileplume does fine, but loses to Lance's full restore. It manages to take down my Pidgeot, and it goes down to Missing No, but I just barely edge out a win because of poison. Lance, being a sore loser, says that he could have wrecked Team Rocket's operation anytime he wanted, but was just biding his time for a big event like the Silph Co raid to make an example out of us, but was of course shown up by an 11-year-old. He runs off to Loserland where he'll probably lose some more.
Loser! You're a loser! Are you feeling sorry for yourself? Well, you should be, cause you are dirt! You make me sick, you big baby!
From here, I strong arm my way through the guards and get to Victory Road, where it's a pretty straightforward path due to probably Red solving all the puzzles and stuff. At the league, we run to our bestie one more time. While reminiscing about that time I stole from a little girl, we get interrupted with a broadcast from our new dear leader. Blue just became champion, and while I'm not one to get very political, Blue's got some great policies that really speak to me, you know? Like riding bikes indoors and other good stuff. Vote Blue 2024. We also hear that Red is already in the middle of ripping the Elite for a new one, and we spot Oak coming into the league as well. Now Bill hurries in and says that he's at Oak's basement too, and tells us to go in there and stop him. Unfortunately though, we get stopped at the door. Worry not, because Ronnie goes through some nice character development as we max his social link. And he apologizes about not sticking to a plan and being a bad criminal. So Ronnie pulls a daisy on the guard, giving us access to the Elite Four and the Champion rooms. Stopping by each of the Elite Four, they've all been crushed after getting destroyed by two 11-year-olds in like the same hour. Don't have any Pokemon to fight us with. Agavo is proud of Best Board Blue and lightly threatens us. Now we get to witness a classic cutscene that plays after defeating the champion in the original games. Of course, in the context of this hack, it's super ironic how Oak berates Blue for not treating his Pokemon right. You gotta feel for Blue in this hack. Great guy that came at the absolute worst time. So now camera crew and others arrive to witness Red's inauguration. Oak is a friendly opening, and then we hear Red say his first word. Now Oak's plan starts to set in motion. He starts speaking on Red's behalf and tries to begin radical change in Kanto. So he points out how Lance has been pretty useless. Which to be fair, Red aside, he still did just get beat by a regular 11-year-old and some random rocket grunt. He does make a good point about how just having random legendary Pokemon roaming around the region can be dangerous. Blaine and Fuji come in though and expose Oak's plan and what Red really is. Oak runs into the Hall of Fame room and Agava suddenly falls back in love with Oak again and starts going crazy. Now she sticks her ghost Pokemon on us and freezes everyone in fear. But we still have our Silph Scope, so we're good. Agaville leads with Gengar and I lead with Pidgeot. Pidgeot hangs on thanks to a Citrus Berry and is able to roost, leading to it beating Gengar. Next up is Crobat and I switch into Missing No. It chunks Missing No down really bad, but I'm still able to take it down with Psychic. Now Arbok comes in and I decide to stay in and go for freezes in case of pursuit. I actually do get the freeze, but it doesn't matter because it defrosts right away. I take it out with Dugtrio and now I switch into Raticate to crunch Mischievous. It gets Perish Song off, but I do take it out. I switch around to get rid of the Perish, but I eventually go back to Raticate, who gets me to KO and to battle. We get inside and Oak is super mad at us. He makes another fair point of how dumb it is that Pokemon League exists resist and can give so much power to any random trainer. He also mentions that he's been with Red the entire time, which explains why we've seen Oak sporadically throughout the region, and why Oak's words echo in your head whenever you try to ride a bike indoors in the original games. He 6 red on us and we have to battle him. Now I'm gonna be honest, I lose a lot during these next 2 battles, but my strategy mostly stays the same, so I'll mainly just be covering the winning attempt. I think I might post a full uncut playthrough of this run, but only if there's a demand for it, because it doesn't have commentary and would probably take more than 12 hours to upload due to my internet speed. Back to the battle, I lead with Dugtrio while he leads with Charizard. I take it out with Rock Slide, but just barely hang on. Now I once again had to face that dreaded Lapras. The strategy I stuck with was to stall out his Ice Beam PP of Vaporeon, who resists it and can regain HP with Wish. It takes a very long time, but eventually runs out and leaves itself open to getting KO'd by Vileplume. Now for Alakazam, it tended to spam Future Sight, so I banked on that for some free switch-ins, but it spams Psychic instead and gets an easy KO on Raticate. I take it out with Surf on Vaporeon. Out comes its Pikachu, and it's a pretty easy switch into Dugtrio. It does manage to get a light screen up before I take it out, and I get paralyzed from Static too. Now running Resto Chesto on a Dugtrio isn't ideal, but I managed to get it off in front of Dragonite thanks to Dragon Tail. It lets me just barely survive again. It brings out Pidgeot and wears it down a ton before forcing me into missing though. Now Dragonite does a lot of damage with Aqua Tail, so I really need to depend on Freeze here to win. I'm gonna speed it up, but I freeze a ton and even blow through all of his full restores. Eventually I stop playing Russian Freeze and switch into Vaporeon, who takes out Dragonite even without any Blizzard PP left. Now only Snorlax remains, and even though it takes out both Vaporeon and Dugtrio, it gets chunked a ton. And without any full restores left, even Vileplume is able to get the KO on it. I get the option to steal from Red, which would actually be super helpful here, but rip once again. Now Agatha comes in and apologizes to Oak, saying that she's had it wrong all along. Oak though goes full incel mode and isn't having any of it, and holy... Yeah, that's why she doesn't show up in Gen 2. So Bill and Ronnie show up and start mocking this unstable old man who literally just killed someone. Yeah, good thinking guys. Oak reveals that he's been keeping in shape and, oh crap, we have to battle him. Fun fact, if you lose to Oak here, he kills you for real, and you have to go back to your last save. He leads with Tauros against my Dugtrio, and I switch to Vaporeon, who thankfully avoids a takedown. I used Rain Dance because I knew Tauros could swagger, so hydration would be helpful, and it helps with surf damage too. I take it and actually level up my Dugtrio to 50, finally letting me replace Jake with Earthquake. Next up is Jolteon, so of course I switch into Dugtrio, letting me absorb a Thunder. Now even though that's a Jolteon and this is a Dugtrio, because I'm modest natured, Earthquake leaves Jolteon with a slither of health. This actually works in my favor because I waste its wishes and full restores away. It goes down eventually and next up is Venusaur. I switch into Vileplume to tank a Petal Dance, which still does a lot for 4 times resist, and put Venusaur to sleep. It gets kinda close thanks to a crit, but I'm able to spam Sludge Bomb to victory regardless. Now it's Exeggutor and I'm thinking I might outspeed, but no. So now I send out Pidgeot who KOs it without much issue. Next up is Arcanine who KOs with extreme speed, but I'm still in really great shape. Now obviously I bring up Vaporeon, and I should have mentioned this earlier, but I actually managed to avoid extreme speed thanks to Bright Powder, which makes it a bit smoother. I get the KO and now we're on to the final Pokemon. It's Gyarados, but I don't even bother switching. I'm so done at this point after this grueling series of battles and just brute force it with Surf. After defeating Oak, we get one last opportunity to truly shine as a Rocket member, making all our sacrifices worth it, bringing back honor to our name, showing that our cause wasn't pointless, and that we were able to truly accomplish something, but I don't steal from him. So after I did all the hard work, Lance sends some cops stroll in to arrest Oak. Oak tries to pull one last move using Red's Pokemon to attack us, but Missing No jumps in and saves the day, letting Oak get taken in. Now unfortunately Lance's head is still up in Loserville and he takes me in too, even though I've literally done nothing. Now we're all in court and we get to see where everyone ends up. Red is stripped of his title and Blue goes back to being champion for a few seconds before giving it back to Lance, which sucks. Red is then deemed unfit to use Pokemon in civilized society and loses his license, which sets up his Mount Silver appearance really well. Oak's lawyers are super good, so he gets away with pretty much everything, including his 11-year plan to upend the government, killing someone, and violating probably several different laws of nature, and he's only really punished on breaking his ban on battling, but he's at least banished from Kanto. Now as for me, I played as morally as I possibly could have, but I still got treated as a criminal and punished for a 1-year sentence. Yeah, I think this is the best ending possible. I know that because I got the same ending while I stole from literally everyone and paid off the cops. Yeah, I'm a little salty. Now after I crazy adventure, I go back to the Pokemon Center, take out Spearow, and I go back to that little girl all the way from the very start. I save the game, and that concludes Rocket Edition. Of course, there is a very interesting post-credit scene, but you have to play the game to see it yourself. Alright, so like I said, I want to give a big thanks to Zwigo for inspiring me to make this video. If you enjoyed this video, I recommend you check out his as well. Also, if you're interested in Rocket Edition, I will be linking the game down in the description, and I'll also link my previous video on the game, which like I said was more of a review and went detailed into what I liked. So I know my content's been all over the place, but I'll probably be going back to my more regular commentary style videos soon, and this video I feel might just be a one-time thing unless it gets really popular, because it took a lot of time. I think this is the longest video I've made on my channel in like 5 years. That said, I am also still kind of an amateur when it comes to making this stuff, so I'm really sorry if I didn't follow like the proper etiquette with challenge runs or something like that. This was definitely more so to just have fun and, frankly, was sort of an excuse just for me to play more Rocket Edition. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching this far, and have a good day.